Okay, welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining us today on another Tuesday afternoon for our webinar series. If you are not familiar with the Ohio Bird Conservation Initiative, we are a network of organizations throughout the state of Ohio and regionally working together to advance bird conservation. So that's everyone from state and federal wildlife agencies to metro parks. And we're joined by some metro parks folks today, as well as universities, museums, nature centers, and even private businesses throughout the state of Ohio and in neighboring states and provinces as well. We're doing this webinar series every other month. So our next webinar is scheduled for November 22nd, and we'll have registration open for that soon on our website. We're excited to welcome Judy Semrock, who you may have known as a naturalist in the Cleveland area, and she's going to be talking to us about chimney swift and chimney swift conservation. So I've seen Judy talk about chimney swifts before, and she's fantastic. So we're really excited to welcome her for the next one in November. So keep an eye out on our website and for our email newsletter. We'll be posting that information very soon. For today's webinar, we will be using the Q&A function. So at any point during the presentation, if you think of questions that you'd like to ask Carrie, go ahead and enter those into the Q&A. I believe I turned on upvoting. There's always lots of boxes to tick, but if somebody else asks a question that you're also interested in, you should be able to upvote that and it'll move it to the top of the queue. Feel free to use the chat box throughout today's presentation, and Jen and I will keep an eye on that during the program and try to answer any questions you have there. And at the end, we can relay some of that information to Carrie. All of the websites that we put on are available on our YouTube channel, and they're indexed on our website. So if you go to obcinet.org, you'll be able to find all of the programs that we've done in the past and links to those recordings. That includes the current webinar series that we're doing, as well as resources for landowners on forest and other habitat management. Some of our Lights Out work is featured on there as well. So check out our YouTube channel, and you can sign up for our newsletter on the website as well. So without further ado, let's not waste any more time and get into today's program. I'm really excited to welcome Carrie Morrow today, who's the Assistant Resource Manager with Columbus and Franklin County Metro Parks. And she's going to be talking about habitat restoration work that they're doing within the park system. So with that, welcome everyone and welcome Carrie. I'll stop sharing and the floor is all yours.
All right, thank you Matt and Jen and OBCI for inviting me. I am excited to be here and excited to share some of the fun things we're doing at Metro Parks. I will tell you there's so much that I might go off on some tangents, so feel free to reel me back into what interests you, because I love birds too, but I love all the other things as well. So, all right, I'm gonna share my screen. Let me know it works.
Yep, make sure you click that sound button.
Yep, cool. Okay, good?
Yep, looks good.
All right, so welcome everyone. I was going to keep it pretty broad, but at some point I'm going to narrow it down to Darby Creek Metro Park, which is our largest Metro Park. But just to get started, I'm going to introduce myself and the Metro Parks overall, and give you a rundown of what my department does, the Natural Resource Management Department in Metro Parks, and then talk a little bit about Darby Creek and some of the really cool projects we've done out there. If you're a birder in Ohio, you've probably heard about some of our neat places that we have all over Central Ohio, but particularly Darby is pretty special. So with that, we'll end with questions, but like Matt said, I love feedback to kind of hear what you guys are interested in. So please feel free to raise your hand and ask those questions to help steer me on what interests you, because there's so much to talk about. So, okay. Now, Metro Parks in Ohio were started through this special park district law, and it began in 1917. I mean, this is crazy. This is like 100 years ago. And Columbus and Franklin County Metro Parks was actually started in the early to mid 40s, with Blacklick Woods being our very first Metro Park, which is on the east side of Columbus. And we're currently sitting around 28,000 plus acres. And it's easier just to put the plus because that acreage has gone up and up and up since I've been with the park district. And just to let you know, I have been with Metro Parks since the late 90s. I started out as an intern. I was a OSU student, Buckeye, and got an internship with Metro Parks that changed my life, and it changed the course of my career. Got to work with some really fascinating people, and I was like, this is what I want to do. So I did that. I volunteered. I became a part-time ranger, and at the same time, I was working for the state with ODNR and the Natural Areas and Preserves program. And then I landed this job, which I've been at for 22 years as the assistant resource manager, working in natural resources and getting to restore and preserve all the cool and amazing places that we have here in Central Ohio. So with that, this is a really cool image that I love to share. Kind of shows you the growth of urban growth. And when we started with the Metro Parks back in the 40s, the first parcel of land we bought was out in Reynoldsburg or Blacklick Woods, this little green blob. And then you can see a short time later, the red represents urban growth and the green represents the park growth. So those folks that got this started really had some big ideas, and it was great that they did that. And then you can comparatively, Pickerington Ponds was nothing back then, but just, you know, in a few handful of years, we've grown and we're surrounded by urban growth. And then of course, Sharon Woods, one of our early parks as well. You can see that same growth. Really fascinating. So this is an image that shows you kind of like the green emerald web that we have here in Columbus. I grew up in Northern Ohio, so Cleveland Metro Parks, the Emerald Necklace was something that I was familiar with. And when I came down to OSU, I was like, wow, this is pretty sweet. And going out to Darby, I had no idea. I was like, this is amazing. This isn't that far. So again, 20,000 plus acres. We have 20 park areas right now. We're in 7 counties. When I started, we were roughly about 14,000 acres. So we've doubled in size in my career. And that's thanks to a lot of great people that went out and had the vision to kind of look for these opportunities, these great places, these green spaces. And now we're starting to move closer in to Franklin County. I'm just going to highlight some of those newer parks that you might not be familiar with: Scioto Grove, Heritage Trail, Rocky Fork, and then the star is our newest park, Quarry Trails, which is pretty spectacular. Something you wouldn't, there's some neat things that you'll see. This is just some pretty pictures of some of the parks. Some of it's preservation, like swamp forest and some oak maple woods, and some of it's restored wetlands and restored prairies. And this is a list of all the parks that we currently have. And we're not done yet. That's what's exciting. We're working on some new metro parks in Central Ohio. Again, focusing in on that Franklin County area. We've started working around lots of different things. And if I have enough time, I'll kind of highlight some of these parks as well. So Blacklick Woods, being our first one, is also one of our state nature preserves. So that one is called the Walter A. Tucker Preserve, sorry. We're proud to have 6 state nature preserves in the metro parks. And they, with having been with the Natural Areas and Preserves organization, that it's kind of neat to kind of bring that from when I was there too. So Blacklick's got that really high quality swamp forest, and it's surrounded by urban center now, but was farmland. So, and the golf course is also a neat addition too. So here's our newest metro park, Quarry Trails, with the, you know, restored quarry areas. We've got these incredible views, opportunities for people to experience some of those things. No nature preserve at Quarry Trails yet. High Banks, as many of you are from, that one is our Edward F. Hutchins Preserve. And you may be familiar with our nesting bald eagles as well. Another one of our nature preserves, state nature preserves, is Sharon Woods, which is also known as the Edward S. Thomas Preserve. And that's up in northern Columbus. And then Pickerington Ponds. This is a kettle lake that was preserved in the heart of the park was 400 acres when I began my career back in the late 90s, and it's now over 1,600 acres, which is quadrupled, and it's now surrounded by a lot of housing developments and everything, but at least we got that nice big contiguous wetland. We've done some great work out there too. And of course, Clear Creek is the largest state nature preserve, over 5,000 acres. And that one was started in 1996 and it was donated to us. So this one was outside of Franklin County, you know, in Hocking and Fairfield. And it's, we've grown it since we've received those donations to kind of help preserve the Clear Creek Valley and some of the hemlock forests. One of the things that we've been working on diligently this year is battling hemlock woolly adelgid, which was unfortunately found last winter. We've been treating infected trees and trees in nearby areas to kind of help preserve some of those hemlock forests. And one of our newest state nature preserves is W. Pearl King Prairie, which is out in Madison County. And this is a little postage stamp prairie. It's a lovely example of a native savanna prairie with 300-plus-year-old oaks and rare plants. And back in the day, before we had this property, we actually had staff members collecting seed here. So it's some of the origins of our prairie restoration projects. And little known, this is a little known gem that we have up in Delaware County, Northeast Delaware County. It was donated to us by a gentleman and his wife, and it's preserving these rare skippers, these rare butterflies, and it's only about 15 acres. It's surrounded by farmland, and hopefully it's the future of another park, metro park, county park, some type of project to help preserve that. We're friends with the neighbors. We've got our farmer friends that help maintain our access lane. And we do monitor our butterflies out here to kind of monitor their progress and help us determine what we need to do. It's kind of a private little place. There's really no public access yet, but it's a place that we've had since the early 2000s. All right, so natural resource management, it's a big part of what the Metro Parks is about. It's our foundation. We're here to make sure that the natural areas are healthy and we're have places for people to come and enjoy. If we didn't have our parks, what would our folks do? And as was evident with the COVID pandemic, we had the highest numbers of attendance. People really used our parks as refuges, and we're so grateful that we have them. And now we're kind of recovering from the pandemic and getting back into doing projects on the ground and enhancing our parks. And I'm excited to share some of those with you. So some of the things that we focus on, invasive species management is really a big one. I do a lot of work with this, making sure that our native plants and animals are healthy and have good habitat. You know, it's changed a lot over the last 20 some years, and some of the things that were an issue back when I started are not as big of a concern now, and we're learning some new things. And calorie pear is kind of like my enemy number one. It really gets into areas, and that was an innocent plant brought over to, you know, use in landscaping. So, but this is a big part of what we do. We spend a lot of money, we spend a lot of staff time controlling invasive species throughout the metro parks. Now we can't do it everywhere. And I know you're probably thinking, well, there's lots of stuff, but we try to prioritize where the best habitats are, where we can do the most work with the, you know, make the best results with what we've got. We also do wildlife management, of course. I mean, these are our predecessors. They were here first. We're here to take care of their ground, and people love to watch them, as you know. Lots of fun things, lots of different stories to tell you here. No birds. Why did I do that? Because there's so many other things in the parks. And I get to enjoy all of that diversity. Here we go. Here's some birds for you. As you well know, bald eagles have been expanding throughout Ohio. It's a joy to see them. I never get tired of seeing them. And in fact, the more the merrier. Like I said, I grew up in Northern Ohio, so seeing them up there in mass, and then, you know, not seeing them so abundantly when I moved down here to Columbus, it's like, oh, now they're starting to, their numbers are coming up again. Okay, this is great. And sandhill cranes, incredible. You go to Florida, they're like backyard, you know, backyard birds, but here in Ohio, it's such a delight to see them. So we also do lots of surveys and research. This we use a lot of partners, working with a lot of universities like OSU and colleges, as using our parks as field labs. In fact, some of our park land used to be field labs for OSU, and that was at Clear Creek Metro Park. And we've kind of taken that on and you know, get to partner with them for other research opportunities. And some of these, you know, we do bird surveys, bat surveys, butterfly surveys, fish aquatic surveys. Insects are really important. They're all indicators of how our parks are doing and how they are functioning. If we notice an abundance of something or a lack of something, that helps us gear our resource management activities. And of course, rare species are really important too, because as we know, we can be refuges for them. Barn owls, we've had several records of them at different parks throughout Central Ohio. We've found that we've got rare plants and rare insects and fish. So we're really blessed here to have all this diversity. I want to talk a little bit about species reintroductions, because this is really cool. We started reintroducing quail at Slate Run Metro Park, which is down in the southeast quadrant of Ohio, or Central Ohio. And it's our more rustic rural farm. So we thought that this would be a good place to do it. And it's been working now for several years. Yes, we do add birds every year, but we have been able to document birds breeding on their own. We've heard them in our bird surveys. So they're kind of accountable species now. Controlled succession, lots of this. We have a lot of tools in our quiver: mowing, burning, treating, cutting. Lots of these things to help us manage large scale projects. You know, we're usually dealing with hundreds or thousands of acres when we're doing habitat management. So habitat restoration, this is familiar. This is Ohio. This is some prairie remnants from 1937, what they saw as prairie. And that's representative of this western area, western central Ohio, the Darby Plains Prairie area. So just to give you a little summation, and again, I just added pluses to all of these because it's constantly changing. The past 20 years, we've done over 2,000 acres of wetlands. We've done over 1,500 acres of prairie. And every year we're doing more, 1,500 acres of reforestation. And we're kind of picking up on that and adding more trees every year. We've slowed down on land acquisition just because it's not as available as it used to be. And we're starting to kind of reinvest in some of those items, you know, buying trees for our older restoration projects and for our newer restoration projects. And then as well as reinvesting in some older projects and finding new stream restoration opportunities. So this is probably 10,000 feet of stream is probably pretty low, and over $10 million in restoration costs. You just don't think that it's that much, but we can put a lot of money on the ground to restore. Sometimes just farm ground gets converted. And we've gone from just a little over 18,000 to over 28,000 acres in 20 years. So how do we keep track of all this? Well, it's not easy, I'm not gonna lie. We have a lot of work to do. We've got a lot to keep track of. So each of our park areas have a resource management plan, and we work that plan with the staff on the ground. So the staff at those parks. And the resource management staff gets to be kind of like the experts that help assist, help do some projects, help advise, help coordinate with our partners and other experts. And each of the parks kind of does this. So when we get a new park on board, we have to start this process over again. But it's almost like after, you know, opening a park and then having another park open and being a part of that, it's almost like, okay, this is a new kid, you know, and we get to grow that part together. So that's been a really special experience. Each of our parks have a map as well that kind of help break down some of those basic habitat areas. You know, brown is for forest, green is for open field, pink is a little more active development. And we break those down so that we can also show and have a corresponding spreadsheet to kind of manage and monitor and keep track of all the things we've done in that managed field unit. So it's a lot. I'm not going to say we're rocking it, because we're probably behind a little bit on some of our projects. And as we open new parks, and we've got to do the same thing. So it's working, but it's a work in progress. All right, prairie restoration. And this is just another map of like the Darby Plains Prairie region, bounded by those glacial features. And this is actually a picture of a restored prairie. And I was out in the prairie this morning picking seed with our volunteers, and there's nothing like being out in the prairie this time of year with the birds singing and the smells of the prairie and everything else. I did want to mention Prairie Oaks. This was our, let's see, 13th Metro Park on the west side of town. It's in the northern area of the Darby watershed, so it's north of Battelle Darby Creek Metro Park. And it's got some of these. This is a remnant savanna that actually doesn't have warm season prairie grasses under it, but it's got cool season grasses under it. But it still was a vision to see, like, historically what those early settlers and those early explorers saw when they came to Ohio. And then of course we've got our remnants, and it's not just our state nature reserve. We've got other state nature reserves in the area that old cemeteries are great places. If they're not mowed to the ground, you can find seed, and we've been able to benefit from collecting seed from those places, and as well as farm ground that you know, our previous staff members would build relationships with the locals and find ways to, hey, can I go on your back 40 and check out, I see some plants back there that look kind of interesting. So that's another way we can collect that seed. So bringing it to Battelle Darby Creek Metro Park, which is the largest metro park in Ohio. It's also our largest metro park, and it's grown from north to south, east to west, as we follow the two scenic rivers, Little and Big Darby Creek. And I'm hoping that plus sign keeps growing. So this is just an example of a big wet prairie restoration that we did. It's also known as the Cool Wine Wet Prairie, or the Watts Wetland. It's on the east side of the park, the core of the park, and it's actually the watershed here split. So we've got Big Darby Creek to the left and Hell Branch Run to the right. And so this is just an early picture of us, like, well, what do we want to do with this? We actually had a farmer paid us to farm it for a while, because we weren't sure what we wanted to do with it. A lot of our early restorations were done with partners, so we had money. This one was actually used with CIP funds, or capital improvement funds, that Metro Parks set aside. And we took 2 years to collect prairie seed to restore this site. So this whole complex, from the top of the page to the bottom, the north to the south, is wet, you know, previously savanna, wet prairie, open prairie, some trees, who knows. But if you go out there, and you can see some of the wet holes just by looking at these old topos and aerial maps. And this is just a good starting point for us. Well, we can throw some, I didn't mean to do that. Those are pretty pictures. You know, where should we put the berms? We can look at the topography, where the wet holes want to be, and kind of figure that out. And again, some inspiration, some pretty pictures to show us these are actually restored prairie photos at Battelle Darby Creek. you know, stand of ashy sunflower with those beautiful oaks in the background. It's hard to beat this time of year. And so we zoom out just a little bit more and you can see some of the others. This green is our land holdings, and the core of the Metro Park is below us here down at the bottom of the page. But our future nature center is called out. We already have that there. Our prairie restoration areas, looking at where we might have berming, where we might have wetland edges, where we could put trails and overlooks. This chunk here that's called wetland mitigation was actually a partnership with the Ohio Wetland Foundation, and they did a swamp forest there with their money. So we basically provided the land and they did the restoration work. So knowing that this was going to be a swamp forest, we started to look at this being wet prairie, but then maybe this northern part of it, we planted several hundred bur oaks to kind of help mimic that savanna appearance and then help blend that swamp forest down into the open prairie. How do we do that? You know, oh, farmland. Farmland for 150 years it was, but it definitely had some failing tile. And so that was easy for us to see where those wetlands would make sense. So, you know, you got to rent some big equipment or hire contractors and dig them out. But you can see here the tile, old clay tile. It was pretty much systematically every 50 feet out on that site. And so we didn't want to tear it all out, but we could strategically kind of block it, tear it up, fill it in so it's no longer draining water. And our goals are to capture those local watersheds. We're trying to bring it back to what it was before it was farmed. And we don't want to do too much work, but you have to preserve your neighbors and what's happening around you, as well as we know that we're flowing into the heart of the park to the west, but we had to go under a road. And so there's other complicated things that kind of work into that. So this is a picture of the farm field where you can see, okay, that wants to be wet. The farmers harvested their crop. That's going to be pretty easy, right? And it really doesn't take very long. Once you stop, and I'm sure you've seen this on places where the farmers left a field go fallow, you've got little standing water, and those are sometimes pretty exciting places to find pretty cool migrating birds. Boy, I've got a lot of pictures of Pearl King. It's a good place to go. It is open to the public. It's on 2 roads. You can go out there. I think you might need to get a permit. I'm not sure, but just to walk around, you can explore and see the big oaks and the prairies as they go through the seasons. And one of the specialties there is royal catchfly. It's pretty spectacular. It's going into seed right now, but you might be able to catch a few late bloomers. And then of course, you know, with these prairie restorations, we want to welcome some of the most endangered birds out there, the threatened birds, those grassland species. These are they feel common to me because we see them a lot in our metro parks, but I know that our parks provide refuges for these guys, and hopefully their future looks a little brighter with more restoration on the ground. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention our challenges. It is not easy to manage thousands of acres of habitat. We can say we've gone in and we've restored by, you know, removing some tile, blocking some tile, building some birds to hold a little bit of water, and planting a bunch of native species, and also allowing the seed bank to rejuvenate. But as we do that, we know that invasive species are a problem, and they move in. So one of our biggest ones, all the red you see here is Phragmites, or common reed grass. If you've ever been to Northern Ohio, there's several places, parks and nature preserves that have had this problem with Phragmites. So I came from that, and when I brought that down here to Columbus, and I started to see this popping up in this area, we knew it was bad. We were like, uh-oh, this is a priority. We got to get on this. So we've had staff that maps the areas, and that way they can keep track of where they've treated, where they haven't treated, new sites, other sites that might need to be mowed or treated with chemical, or whatever we need to do to kind of help keep this at bay. If we did nothing, I'm pretty confident this would be solid Phragmites. So fortunately, we've had the ability to go in there and keep it out. Some other invasive species, we've lost the war, but this one is one worth battling to keep this area in healthy. So one of the species that we have in the past done a lot of work with is honeysuckle, and it's kind of naturalized itself into Ohio, but it's still worth fighting in certain areas. And we've used grants and other folks, partners, to help open up fence rows. That way it limits the seed effect into neighboring properties and our neighboring restoration sites, be it wetlands or prairies or meadows. And that's proven to be pretty good, and we're hoping to do more of that in the future. Reforestation is, like I said, it's kind of picking up. We're doing more and more of that. And we don't do it any one way. We've pretty much tried everything, and it just depends on the site. But the direct seeding seems to be really helpful, really useful. It's fairly cheap. You can go out and, just like Mother Nature, toss the tree seeds and acorns and nuts around and let them figure it out. Containerized plants also work, a little more expensive. You start getting into bigger material, you need more equipment, it gets more expensive. But of course, you know, it's never too late to plant a tree. So, and this is one of the things, patience is a virtue, right? So here's a field, just an old meadow. And then we planted it in some tree seedlings. So you can barely see the little tree tubes here. And then, you know, this was just 20 years. No, it's not 20 years. This was more like 15. So now it looks simple enough, but we definitely just waited, and it's fun to go back and be able to say, wow, I remember when. And now it's even more grown up than this picture depicts. Some of the challenges too is wildlife. We've found that, you know, deer can be a problem when you plant larger stock of trees, and we've experimented with a lot of different ways of wrapping our trees. Small mammals love to girdle trees and seedlings and pull them out of the ground. So that's been a challenge too. But overall, you think you're trying to restore habitat, and if they're using the trees in their way, then that's just fine, and that's good. And of course, all the little critters that come and join, and it's one of those things that if you build it, they will come, kind of thing. All right, so this is another project at Darby Creek. And it was, the big Darby Creek is back here, if you can see that the left, top left picture. And we were restoring kind of a subsurface drainage. So not quite a stream, but allowing the water to just kind of bleed over the field and slowly make its way into the creek. We planted a bunch of trees, as you can see, and the site looks really, it's coming along. I mentioned fence row removal. So we've got prairie on either side of this fence row. It's made up of hackberries and oaks and lots of honeysuckle. So we remove the honeysuckle, and then we restore underneath it with maybe nothing at all, or maybe we come in and we plant. And we also do some vernal pool restoration. And this is, again, another farm field. And it tells us where it wants the vernal pool. So we can kind of work with the topography here, just maybe help it out a little bit and scalp out an area. And, you know, within days or weeks, it starts to fill up with water with the right soils. And again, another example of a prairie pothole or prairie vernal pool. This one with the idea that we're not going to let the woods grow up around it. So we're going to manage this more as an open wetland. So when the prairies mature, you can't even see the wetland unless you're a bird flying in the sky. So this was a Battelle Darby, our west side of Big Darby Creek, or Darby Creek Drive. We did reforestation, and we planted some big things and big trees and some seedlings, and we're just kind of letting it grow up slowly. And this is another reforestation area. It's, you know, the image and the goal is to help build that forest buffer along each side of the creek, and help expand that forest corridor. And then where the uplands kind of scream for prairie and savanna, we will focus on that. And we've learned that it's best to build your wetlands first and then plant your trees. Just another example of a pothole wetland. This is, it's dried out and during the dry season, and it fills in when spring rains come or the winter rains come. So I mentioned species reintroduction. I'd be remiss as well to overlook our bison that we introduced in 2011 at Battelle Darby. We had a nice herd that we brought over from the wilds as a partner. We built the Prairie and provide them a satellite pasture for them to graze and grow. And we found that the bison love the native warm season prairies. So we've been able to share that and share seed with the wilds so that they can also have that experience for their herd of bison as well. We actually had some babies born this summer, if you get a chance to check that out. So here's a native prairie. Well, actually, this is a restored prairie, and this is not metro parks. This is bison on the plains, right? And they're tearing it up, and they're wallowing and doing what bison do. One of the cool things is they partner with the prairie and create habitat. We found that when we were just planting, you know, warm season grasses and prairie grasses, it's pretty thick, and not a lot of things can kind of move around through it. And so when you add those grazers, and they create paths, and they create those prairie potholes without us having to do it, and they create places for the birds and other species to you know, use and enjoy. And of course, all us folks who like to watch them get to experience that as well. Another cool introduction that we've done at Battelle Darby is the northern riffle shells, which is a rare mussel, which is also very important to the biodiversity of the park and the creek. And they're great indicators for water quality. When we have good populations of mussels, we know that the water quality is in good shape. And when we lose species, that's indicative of something else going on. So some other places had an opportunity for us to get these northern riffle shells, thousands of them, and bring them into Battelle Darby. So that was exciting. And you can see the crews just getting ready to put them in. We've got, this is an example of what they look like underwater. "13-line ground squirrels were actually kind of a one-shot we tried, and it may or may not have worked. We're not quite sure, because these are secretive little boogers, and they like to sleep a lot. So it's kind of a hard one to find, but we got a source of, you know, they were living in a cemetery, and it wasn't really good to have burrowing squirrels in a cemetery. So we worked out a deal to get them to transport them to our park, and we put them in with the bison, thinking that that might be a good place for them. We had a couple records of them moving around, finding dead ones on the road. So we know that they stuck around. We don't really know if they're still there or not. You know, if you're out and about in the summer and you happen to catch one, great. We don't I would imagine they're still there, or they've moved on and found somebody else, someplace else in the park, and they're doing it. And we may try again too. It's one of those things that they're native. This is their habitat. Maybe if we can provide more for them, they'll make more of a showing. They're not as obvious as the bison, but they're still pretty fun to watch. Now this one's even more secretive and hard to find. We reintroduced some hellbenders to the Big Darby Creek, and they are native to this area. They were just, well, we don't know what happened. So these guys are really neat. You can go to our nature center and see one of our education animals. And we had the opportunity to release some subadults, so youngsters, but big enough to survive on their own. And we're now in the process of looking for them and kind of hoping to confirm that they've done well and they're spreading. We're looking into some eDNA and capture and recapture, or just pit tagging and finding them so that we don't disturb them. But this is kind of a fun thing. All right, some more pretty pictures. Rare species are always a highlight. Interesting plants. All of this diversity just lets us know that our parks are doing well and they're healthy, and it makes all the visitors have a great time in seeing all the different things. So I'm going to skip past that. That's a Prairie Oaks Metro Park project that's probably not well known. It's north of Broad Street. It's kind of in between Prairie Oaks and Darby Creek Metro Park. But if you want to know more about it, I'd love to tell you more. One other success story that I wanted to bring up, I'm a bat person. I really love bats. And I think one of the things that is just great with the habitat that Metro Parks brings to the landscape is we were able to document the federally endangered Indiana bat in the mid-2000s. And it was the first time that record was found for Franklin County. It's known, it's suspected and known all over the state. And now with white nose syndrome coming into play, it's kind of it's nice to be able to know that we still have these guys on the landscape, and we've been able to help them by offering a little bit of fake habitat, a little real habitat, whatever we can to get them going. So I just want to show you a couple pictures of bats, just so I know you guys think your birds are cute, and birds are very cute, but bats are really cute too. And they fly at night, and they do some of the things that our night flying birds do. So this is the Indiana bat up close and personal, state and federally endangered. And really a lot of our bats are in trouble, unfortunately, and they're getting listed pretty quickly. The little brown bat used to be really, really common. I don't see it anymore. I don't hear it anymore. I actually see the Indiana bat more often than I see this guy. And then the northern long-eared bat is another one of our cave bats, state and federally threatened. It's got really long ears, and you can see if you were to take his little ear and fold it, it goes past his nose. It's one of the ways you can tell in the hand what you're looking at. So just for fun, I don't have any bird songs to play, but I do have the voice of a little bat. You can't really hear with your ear. You need bat detection devices to do this, but it's kind of a fun thing. These are some of the roost trees. Cool story about these dead trees and why dead trees are so important on the landscape. They might not look pretty, but their sloughing bark and their holes and their crevices provide lots of habitat for not just bats, but birds and insects and all those things that help keep our ecosystems going. And a lot of these trees, particularly with our Indiana bat colony, were created by beaver, who girdled cottonwoods and maples and whatever along the river to create these awesome bat trees. This is just an example of some of our roost counts that we do through the summer, just to see how the bats fluctuate in one particular tree over the course of a season. They're constantly moving around. They're constantly looking for different things. So trees are really important in having a variety of trees, not just one species or, you know, just alive or dead. You want a variety of things. So we also happen to create these bat poles that are basically fake bark wrapped on a telephone pole. And now we find that the Indiana bats are going to that. And just this week, we're going to go out again and do another count to kind of see what the numbers are looking like. They should be starting to head not south for the winter, but away to the caves for the winter. Some more pictures of bats. And then this is just a quick little overview of all our different metro parks that I haven't mentioned already. It's really incredible how much we've got right here in Central Ohio. So how am I doing on time?
We're at 10 till 2, so yeah, we're
Good.
Usually around at the end. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, I'll just mention here my thank you slide. That's how you can contact me if you have any other questions or any questions. We can do some questions now, but these are two of my favorite naturalists that are not quite that little anymore. Both of my kids are now over the age of 18, which is hard to believe, but I used to take them out on my bat counts and bird surveys and stuff. And so I just thought I'd share that with you. And then we can go to questions.
That was really great. Thanks a lot, Carrie. I'm always impressed with all of the metro parks systems in Ohio,
Yeah.
But especially Columbus and Franklin County. You all are doing really fantastic stuff.
Thank you.
And we've had some great comments in the chat, and our first question will reinforce that. This is from Darlene, and it looks like Darlene is always scheming to get new presenters. So I think what I will do is I will put you two in touch via email so that you can coordinate additional talks. So you've done a great enough job that you're already getting hired to do more talks.
Super. Hopefully I can do this one outside or in, you know, in front of real people.
So we do have another question. So Dale asks, how do you deal with tile that's also draining the adjacent property owner's land?
Right. So good question. You know, we have to be respectful of the drainage, and that's very important. You know, you're working with man-altered or human-altered sites. So we would never want to hurt anyone else's drainage. So if they're coming onto us and we can't hold it all, we'll continue their drainage through our property to you know, to the proper outlet. Or you know, we work with them and help educate them on what we're doing. It doesn't always work. People don't always see a wetland as a good thing to be a neighbor of. I'd be super excited because a healthy wetland is a great neighbor, because that's where all the mosquito predators are growing and that's where the birds are going to be. So we try to do education. We definitely keep that in mind with our designs when we're working with our engineer consultants and in-house. That topography and all of that is really important, and that goes into the consideration on how we're going to build it.
Great, thanks. Jay Wright, who, for clarity, he's now with Metro Parks Toledo. He asks what the management regime is like at Battelle Darby, Wet Prairie. How often do you burn, mow, etc.?
Oh, well, we'd love to do a lot more. You know, ideally you want to burn a site every 3 to 5 years. We're lucky if we get into the same site, you know, once every 10. And that's just a limitation on our staff and our ability to do that. You know, we've grown so fast in the past 10, 15, 20 years that we're now starting to look and go, oh my goodness, there's a lot to do here. So, you know, we hire contractors. We do have our own burn team, and interestingly enough, our burn windows are getting smaller and smaller too, as development is crowding out our properties, and we have to manage smoke a lot differently. So sometimes those windows, we just can't use certain tools, so we can't burn. So, you know, we use herbicide. I mean, we got to use it all. And we just try to work with Mother Nature as best we can. Because when you work with her, it's a lot easier than when you work against her. So, and we find that out in the long run. Earlier restoration projects that were like, well, we really forced something on the landscape here. This is not good. Let's try something else.
Yeah. I have a quick follow-up to that. I know you're using fire for a lot of the prairie and grassland habitats, but are you doing controlled burns in any of the woodland habitat that you have in the park system? Okay, great.
Yeah, we have. And again, I go back to, sometimes I'd love to light the whole prairie on fire, the whole park, you know, just let the prairie burn from the east to the west and the west to the east, or whatever the winds, wherever the wind's blowing. But it is a dangerous tool, and we respect that. And so a lot of things go into those decision making. Sometimes we're like, yes, we can burn here, here, here tomorrow. And then when we wake up and then the weather's different, we can't. But we're working on getting some more burn bosses. We're got to build the team. We've got a lot of great people out in the park district that are, you know, super at that. So it's something we'd like to use more than we don't. I mean, we just don't.
Yeah, it's understandable. It's a tricky thing to try to incorporate.
But it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, and it's great when you can pull it off, because it really has a lot of rewards.
And it really does. You can really see the prairies benefit, where it benefits the seed production, habitat, all that stuff. It's really what the prairie wants.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. So our next question from MH Deal, they asks, do you have a minimum acreage for parks, I guess, when you're acquiring new lands?
That's a good question. You know, it's really for our director, because he kind of goes out and kind of figures that out in our development, you know, our development crew, strategic planning and all that. You know, I think we've received property donated from this, you know, small, less than 10 acres, or, you know, and we've bought sites that small, but it just depends on where they're at. Yeah. Like I said, we're in 7 counties, so we're really big, and now we've got a lot, like half of our acreage is outside of Franklin County, and now we're starting to kind of redevelop and coming into Franklin County. So that might be the focus right now. And if it's, you know, if it's like we bought a quarry, I mean, if it's green, if it could be green, we bought an old YMCA camp. So, I mean, there's opportunities still to be found, and just got to get creative. And I guess I can't say that anything is too small if it's in the right place and it's connected to river or another parcel or something like that.
Yeah, okay, great. Joseph, who's with the Division of Wildlife, asks if you're doing any grassland bird monitoring at your sites.
Yeah, we do. Not as much as I'd like to, but we have several of our grassland properties that we do breeding bird surveys on primarily. Because we like to know who lives there. Like, migrators are great, and I love that, but let's kind of focus in on who's living there, who's raising babies, you know, who's doing that kind of stuff. So our breeding bird surveys are kind of how we do that. And our grasslands are very important. So we've got cool season grasslands that we survey, and the prairies as well.
Cool. So Jay he says that you mentioned you tried a number of ways to wrap or protect trees in restoration plantings. What have you found to be the best method to protect them for getting trees to survive?
Well, personally, for, you know, large restoration sites, I don't like to spend money on them, because then you just have to tear them down. You have to go back in and take them out. If you're investing a lot of money in a tree protection is probably pretty important. So wire fence, keep the deer from rubbing it. If you're buying, you know, a tree that doesn't have a lot of stems at the base, that works good. We've tried mount some satchels that you can hang on the tree to kind of help deter mammals. But again, you got to go in and take them out. So personally, when I'm doing a large restoration, I just want to put the money into buying trees. So maximize the number of trees I can put on the landscape, and let Mother Nature figure it out. Let the mammals chew them up. Let the squirrels dig them out. Let the deer rub them. The ones that survive will be the ones that are the next generation. And it'll be kind of look more natural that way too.
So our next question It says, more than 20 years ago, Akron bought 70 acres for an office park, which has never been developed. This was a sand and gravel business, which had bats in 2008. Now the city is trying to, I guess, put this in residential and commercial, which isn't needed in the area. Any suggestions for working with city administrators for park management?
Yeah. How do you know there's bats? What bats? What species? I've got a similar situation happening near my home with a piece of property that's been naturalized for many, many years, and it's being developed or proposed to be developed. Attend any meeting, as many meetings as you can. Try to just try to express how how this could be a good natural area for the area. Pull in those folks. Soil and Water Conservation District for the county, nearby park district, whatever resources you have nearby, because that's what I'm thinking about doing. So
yeah, good tips. Same person asks if you have any certified or acknowledged birdability sites. I don't know if you're familiar with that program or not.
Birdability? No, I'm not.
Yeah, it's a program to make birding more inclusive, so reducing barriers for access and accessibility to different communities and folks with different physical challenges as well.
Well, I mean, I think Metro Parks is pretty accessible.
Yeah, I agree.
You just gotta, there, not all of it is. It can't be, but absolutely. I mean, Blendon Woods, case in point. You can take go to Thoreau Lake on a paved trail. Gosh, I'm sure I could come up with a bunch of other places too. You just go to our website and check it out, because we have a lot of parks and a lot of public use areas for people to experience and enjoy nature. So
yeah, I agree. Lots of sites in very urban areas and great trails for a lot of people with different challenges to use. So the park system is fantastic. That's all the questions we have for today. So thank you again, Carrie, and thank you to everybody who tuned in and asked a lot of really good questions. We'll be back in November with Judy Semrock talking about chimney swifts. So that'll be great because we'll be getting into winter birds basically at that time. So it'll be nice to maybe think ahead for the next spring. So yeah, thanks again, everybody, and we will see you in November.
Thank you, Matt and Jen.
Thanks, Carrie.